morning. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity and praying that the Lord will meet your needs through this, or in part at least. First of all, on anxiety, let's just accept that if you're human, you're going to experience anxiety. So you need to be nice to yourself and not be blaming yourself if you're experiencing any anxiety. That would be normal. It would be abnormal if you didn't experience any anxiety with all that's going on. Then it would be like you're checked out and not aware of your surroundings, kind of thing. So, yeah. So anxiety, to define it, maybe the simple way to define it is a level of fear of the future. Anxiety is future focused on what's happening. And so, yeah, a simple way to think about it is that if I have anxiety, I'm thinking in terms of what's going to happen next, and the uncertainty of that creates anxiety, of course, if there is uncertainty, as there is these days. It's a feeling of worry, of apprehension, of nervousness or uneasiness, tension, typically about some event, something that's imminent event, or some uncertain outcome that's ahead of you. That's in general what anxiety is about. So, I mean, we've experienced it all our lives. If there was a test coming up, there's people that have such extreme anxiety that they actually can't take their test easily because they build up the anxiety to a level that it interferes with their memory and their ability to function during the test. So, yeah, maybe you've never experienced anxiety on that level. Maybe you have. But the point is, it's just a part of life. It's a part of who we are as human beings, that we're going to have to deal with anxiety. A certain level of anxiety is actually helpful. If I didn't care at all about the test, I wouldn't study for it, and I wouldn't be prepared for it. So it's not that anxiety is altogether evil and bad, and certainly shouldn't be labeled as always sinful. But yeah, we're not to allow it to overcome us or to be the deciding factor in our decision making. So, as the scriptures talk about, don't be anxious. Stop being anxious, maybe, is also a good translation of that passage in Philippians 4. Yeah, so you are anxious, but you don't have to keep on being anxious. So it's normal to have to deal with anxiety. It's an extreme if I let it control me. So, yeah. So any question about the definition of anxiety? Do we need to clarify that? Because I'm going to allow you, to interrupt me at any point here. I am presenting right now, but I'm also not wanting just to go past something that you have a question about. So is there any question about what anxiety is?
Yeah, go ahead, Abraham.
Thank you. Quick question. This is just so I can jot this down in my notes. The definition you just gave, does that have any overlap, or is that the same as what would be clinically diagnosed as anxiety, or can that be used for both
Yeah.
and biblically?
Yes, I'm not really trying to be too clinical here. I'm trying to be pretty practical, and but yeah, there's a lot of criteria that has to be met before you have a real anxiety problem. It has to be ongoing for like 6 months. It has to be distressing. It has to be preventing you from doing your normal work that you want to do. It has to be at a pretty high level before it's considered something that's, that has to be addressed as a problem on a clinical basis. So no, I'm really speaking more on the normal everyday anxiety, and not those that are clinically have anxiety disorder. Good question though. Any other question about just the anxiety, the definition of it?
Stephen, I'm Gary. I'm not Dale. I think it's showing up as Dale. I'm Gary. But anyway,
I recognize you, Gary.
um, my, I mean, I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but naturally anxious about getting back together as a community in the church building. But
Sure.
I'm dealing with a situation with myself of guilt because I feel I don't want to think I'm feeling overconfident, but with my faith in the Lord, that I mean everything's all right. Okay, is that a wrong feeling to have in this time that we're in this?
Yeah, I would say generally not. I mean, if you were in total denial, it could be, on the extreme side, because there's two. I think of truth being the straight and narrow road, kind of like Jesus' parable. It's a straight and narrow road that few find, and there's big ditches on either side. So you can take things too far one way or too far the other way. Same with anxiety. You can just be in total denial and I'm just going to avoid thinking about it, avoid dealing with it. Yeah, and that could put me in a place where, yeah, I'm not worried. But the other extreme is letting anxiety control you. But the health in the middle, which says, I admit that there's anxiety there, but I don't have to let it control me, and I trust the Lord, and I'm in a good place. And that sounds like what you're describing. So, the middle is what we're looking for. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So, anxiety, when it's happening to us, it cause increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, increased respiration. If we're really letting anxiety get to us, it can even go to a point of a panic attack and intrusive thoughts where my thoughts are looping and I can't stop them. It's like, I'm just thinking the same thing over and over and over, and I can't seem to get out of it. Those are, some of the signs that it's going too far, that it's reaching a level that, where you have to address it because it's starting to take control. So, the restlessness, not being able to sleep, being easily fatigued, can't concentrate. Yes, just distressed all the time, keyed up, on edge is another thing. Irritable. If that stuff's happening with anxiety, then I'm letting it have too much control. I'm not addressing it in a healthy fashion yet. So I think because we're all Christian believers, we can talk about what we're telling ourselves about God in all of this, and that certainly is an important element in dealing with anxiety. Like, I want to remind myself that God exists, that He's present. He's present everywhere, but He's present with me, that He is good. Remind myself of that He never does anything wrong. He never makes mistakes, that He is loving. He never does anything that isn't loving, that He's all powerful. He never fails. He's omnipotent. Nothing's hard for Him. Nothing's impossible for Him. These are just reminders. I know you know these things, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves because we get off in the way the world looks at situations, and we hear all of the negative stuff spouted all the time, and that can, get us off track. So, He's sovereign and He's all-knowing. He's omniscient. He knows everything. He's all wise. So He knows exactly what to tell me to do in this situation. So God engineers everything. Oswald Chambers, I just read this morning. It's a quote from him. God engineers everything. Everything comes from God, through God. So it's either His perfect will or His permissive will, but it's coming through Him. Especially as believers, we definitely know that we're His children. So nothing's coming to us that He isn't allowing to come to us. If I think that the devil can override God, then He's no longer sovereign. So the devil's there, he's real, but he can't override God. And so God's really not asking us to be in control. The loss of control is something that ramps up anxiety, the sense that I'm not in control and I don't know how to get back in control. But God's not really asking us to be in control. He's asking us to allow him to be in control. So that's a different take on this, a different way to think about it. He's not asking us to make our own plans. He's asking us to listen and join in his plan, whatever that is, in all of this, in every day of our lives. So how I think really does affect my anxiety. Over half of our stress comes from internal sources, not external. Stress and anxiety aren't quite the same thing. Stress is anything that causes me to have to make an adjustment. That causes my life, my body to have to adjust to make a change of some sort. And of course, this one is causing us to make lots of changes, the coronavirus situation. So yeah, so there's going to be stress in this too, but it's not quite the same as anxiety. Stress is, just again, normal for all human beings. Anything that causes me to have to change is stressful, even the good stuff. Like I get a promotion at work, but that's a new position with new responsibilities. I have to get used to that position before I get comfortable. Anything that makes me uncomfortable, that disrupts my normal way of life, that's going to cause stress. Of course it is. It's going to be stressful. Even if it's good, it's still stressful. Does that make sense? Any questions about what we're saying there? So everything is as it should be, is another way to think about bringing your stress and your anxiety down. In this field, my mentor said, if a client ever tells you something that doesn't make sense, it's because you don't know the whole story. Once you know the whole story, it'll make perfect sense. So, so I've applied that broadly to life as well. Everything is as it should be. Once you know the whole story, the Adam and Eve story, that we live in a fallen world, with people of sinful nature, and we have an enemy of our souls. All these are truths and factors that are part of the story. And then, how this started, well, they're still uncovering how this COVID-19 got released in China to the world. But once we know that story, it'll all make perfect sense. Okay, so that's how it came to be. But we get in trouble when we say it shouldn't be like this. I don't accept it. And at the end of my anxiety is acceptance. I have to just accept it is what it is. Now, God, what do you want me to do with it? That's the question, not how do I change it, or not battling. If I fight reality, I always lose. It's like beating my head up against a brick wall. I'm not doing anything to the wall. I'm just beating my head. It's hurting me, but it's not really hurting the wall. And so we fight reality, we lose. We need to have reality thinking, positive thinking's good, but it can also be fanciful. I really need to get to the whole truth. What am I telling myself? Is that completely true, 100% true? And if not, it's false. Then I need to get to what is 100% true. That will bring down my anxiety. Does that make sense? All of our emotions are tied to thoughts. So anytime I've got an emotion I don't like, any negative emotion, anxiety, or any other, I need to get to the thought behind it, because there is thought behind it. So what am I telling myself that's supporting this feeling I'm having? Yeah, so examining our own thoughts, what's going on in our thought life, is a big deal. It makes all the difference, because our thoughts and our emotions and our behaviors, they're all linked together, and they're all in one place at the same time. And if they move, they all move together. At any given moment in time, your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors will match. All right, so questions, comments about any of that? All right. So if I believe that everything is as it should be, then I can relax and focus on the present, which is the way out of anxiety, is to focus on the present instead of the future. Because the present is the part that I'm living at this moment and that I have some control over. What I'm doing in the present, I have control over. What's going to happen in the future, I have very little, if any, control over. So now what am I going to do today? You know, do I have a routine? Am I creating a schedule? Do I have any goals? All of that makes a difference, you know, because I'll ramp up the anxiety if I'm just sitting, worrying, thinking, doing nothing, you know, and I have no plans, nothing to accomplish. There's always stuff to accomplish. Even if you're stuck at home, there's stuff to accomplish. Like right now, you know, the main thing our church members need is connection with people, because we're made for connection. We're made as social beings. So can I connect with my members? Well, yeah, we're doing it right now. And I've got a telephone. I can connect with my members, especially those that are living alone. I can talk to them. I can give them a chance to have somebody to talk to. And I don't have to go anywhere to do that. So that's an example how I could feel useful and do something, you know, positive and actually, you know, ministerial. I can do something that really ministers to people just by giving them someone to talk to. So I'm just throwing out a practical there in terms of ministry. Any questions on that? So
Hey, Steve, I have a question.
Go ahead.
As far as the members of our churches, are there sometimes people may not know that they're feeling the level of anxiety they're feeling? Are there things that we can observe or notice when we come in contact that may give us clues that maybe they do have a high level or an unhealthy high level of anxiety?
Yeah, I think letting them talk it through with you and seeing what the result of that is, if they are able to calm down and regain some sense of a balance and peace and control through talking it out with you, then that tells you, well, you know, they're not off the edge here. They're not, you know, too bad off. If no matter what you know you talk about and how you let them express it, if they're still ramped up too high and they can't seem to manage, then yeah, like we said, you know, if it's keeping them from doing the things they want to do, they can't get out of bed, well, that's probably depression rather than anxiety. But if it just gets to the point that I can't function, you know, I can't accomplish anything, yeah, then maybe they need some further help. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, everybody has to struggle with this same, I mean, everybody's in this together is really the truth. We really are all struggling with the very same situation. We really do not know how this is all going to play out. People are guessing at it, but the truth is nobody can really say definitively how this is going to end and what effect it's going to have on churches going down the line and all of that. Yeah, all of that's yet to be seen. But yeah. But look at Joseph as a great example. You know, his future was certainly uncertain from day to day, and he had no idea, other than the dreams he had had as a child, he had no idea where they were all going to end up, how things were going to end up. And he seemed to be really good at not getting out of control with what was going on. You know, wherever he was placed, whether as a slave or in the prison, he accepted where he was and allowed God to use him there in that place. So acceptance is really a key here, that I don't want to fight this. I want to accept it and see what the reason why God's doing what he's doing. Not to blame God for this, but to know that God's hand is in it, that he's allowing it. So he's allowing it for a reason. He's got a purpose in it. And I have a purpose in it. What is my purpose in it? You know, what does he want to do to use me in the midst of this? Okay, so just to present a little more of the extremes. So I mentioned it earlier, but I'll just go down. So the one extreme, the one ditch off the road is to avoid and deny that there's a problem, to freeze up, not do anything, try to escape, zone out, self-medicate, hide, isolate myself, shut down, do nothing, withdraw. That's on one end of the spectrum. I'm just not gonna deal with this. I'm not gonna face it. I'm not gonna deal with it. So that's one end of the spectrum that's unhealthy. The other extreme is the opposite end of the spectrum. The other ditch on the other side of the road is I'm gonna panic. I'm gonna be believing that I'm desperate. I'm going to feel overwhelmed, overreacting, hyper, out of control, irrational, making emotional decisions, lashing out, fighting. Yeah, that end where I'm letting anxiety get the best of me to where I'm out of control and anxiety is in control of me. I'm not in control of me anymore. I'm letting anxiety be in control of me. So that's the other extreme. The middle looks like this: the balanced, healthy fear. You know, the fear of the Lord is good. The balanced, healthy fear is truth-based. I accept the truth of what's happening. Faith-based, I know God is still in it. I can trust God in the midst of this. My long-term is hope. I know, how everything's going to end with me and God. So I've got hope in the midst of it. My view of the future is that it's in God's hands. I may not know what the future holds, but I know who holds it. So that gives me peace. And I have a relationship with God that's unbroken. This thing can't get between me and God. It can't stop God from taking care of me. So I don't need to believe any of that this is out of God's hands. It's out of control. I'm alone. That would be self-talk that's not true. I'm not alone. I've never been alone. I'm never going to be alone. All of that is fighting the anxiety in a healthy way. Okay, so any question now? The same way to express in a different culture. I'm not sure what that question means. Is there, like, across cultures, you're asking how you define stress?
Well, I'm asking how you identify stress on different cultural beside Caucasian, like Hispanic or different backgrounds.
Yeah, the expression of it may be different as you're saying, because whatever we grew up around is our sense of normal and familiar. So we may have observed how other people deal with anxiety and stress, and have learned to mimic them or copy their response without even knowing it. We do learn whatever we're around as children. So yes, there can be different expressions in different cultures about how people express their anxiety or express the fact that they're stressed. But I think that we have a lot more in common than we have different. We are all human, and we all are all subject to the very same things. Like it said, Jesus was tempted in all points like we are. He was totally human, and he went through the human experience. And it didn't really mean that just because he was Jewish, he didn't experience life the way the rest of the world did that's non-Jewish. No, he understood and he experienced the same sort of things that Gentiles experienced as a human being. So he had to deal with being human, period. So I don't think there's a lot of difference across humanity, except what we learn, as we grow up in a different culture. We learn how to look at, think about, respond to life, based on what we grew up around. So there is that. But the healthy's still healthy, no matter how you grew up. The fact is, there's a healthy way to deal with anxiety and stress, and an unhealthy way to deal with it. and getting control of my thoughts, replacing thoughts. It takes, we're such creatures of habit. It takes 21 to 30 repetitions to create a new neural pathway in my brain, a new thought pattern, a new attitude pattern, a new behavior pattern. None of that comes easy. I have to decide I'm not pleased with this thought, let's say. I'm not pleased with thinking this way, and I'm going to displace it with this thought that is completely true instead of continuing to believe something that isn't completely true. And I've got to do that 21 to 30 times, catch myself with the old thought, because it's a well-worn path in the grass in my brain. That connection's already there. I've got to create a detour off of it. I've got to catch myself and say, no, that's not true. The truth is, and go to my new thought and do that 21 to 30 times before I can establish that I don't go back to that old way of thinking anymore, because I'm not tempted to do that. I've already replaced it or displaced it with this new way of thinking, this new thought. So that's just the human brain. It can change. We can change our brains, and we can create new thought patterns, new attitude patterns, new behavior patterns. It just takes work. It doesn't come easy. So like in my field, insight is known not to be sufficient for change. Just because you learn something new doesn't mean you're going to adopt it as how you think and feel and act. Yeah, just because you've heard it doesn't mean you're going to take it and go it and run with it. Chances are you will stay the same as you have been, unless you're determined to not stay the same. So that's the best predictor of future human behavior is past behavior. So, if a psychologist in a courtroom is asked to testify, what is this person going to do in the future? Only thing he's got to go on is what they've done in the past. You can't really predict what someone's going to do in the future except based on what he's done in the past, because we're creatures of habit. So yeah, we can break habits, but we don't break them easily. So if I have bad habits, like dealing with anxiety, if I have bad habits, then I have to decide I'm not pleased with that, and I'm not going to keep on doing that. And here's what I'm going to do instead. Here's what I'm going to think instead. Here's the attitude I'm going to have instead. Here's the new behavior I'm going to adopt instead. So, yeah.
I found somebody said, I don't remember who, smarter than me, used to like to describe this changing the thought pattern as taking a cassette tape out of our mind and replacing it with a new cassette tape. And of course, the old stuff would be the stuff you want to get out of, and the new stuff would be truth or God's word or whatever it might happen to be. But just that visual image,
Yes.
I found to be helpful to me, because I sometimes have to keep pushing stop and eject button.
Yes.
And
Yes.
putting the tape back in.
Absolutely. Because the stuff we grew up around is the easiest stuff in the world to do. We don't have to work at it. It's our homepage. On our computer, that's our homepage. Whatever we grew up around, that is our sense of normal and familiar. And even if it was totally dysfunctional, it still feels somehow comfortable, because I know how to deal with that. I dealt with that for 18 years or however long I was at home. I dealt with that all those years. That doesn't bother me. I can handle that. And I can marry someone that's just like that because I can handle that. Yeah. So, but yeah, the only thing with your metaphor, with your example, is that you can't erase what's there. It's easy to revert. We can revert. Plenty of people do revert back to their old behavior. As we know, in spiritual terms, we have the new nature and the old nature. The old nature isn't eradicated. We can revert back to it. And we do revert back to it. Anytime we're not in the spirit, then we're in the flesh and we're reverting. So unfortunately, we can't get rid of the old. We can just displace it with a new, but it's still there. It's not erased. So, yeah, some people I know teach that you can get rid of your old nature, but I haven't met anyone who's succeeded in doing that. All right, any other questions?
Hey, Steve, I have another question. For us as church leaders, when we start feeling anxious and have some anxiety,
Yeah.
are there some things that can help us to kind of push that down, like talking to someone? And if we do that, are there ways that we can talk to others that will kind of help with that for us? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, talking things through really is helpful to hear yourself, process it and put it in sentence form and paragraph form really does keep it from being generalized like I just know this is affecting me, but I have no idea how. But once I have to put it in sentences, once I have to put it in words, then I'm starting to get a handle on it. Okay, this is what is really going on with me. So talking is great with someone. If you don't have that or you prefer not that, journaling is also great to do the same thing. Let me journal about what's going on. And here's what I would suggest. First, list all my current anxiety. What is it about? Or all my current stressors. You know, you can do both, anxiety and stress. So what is it that's causing me anxiety? What is it that's causing me stress? So that'd be my first step. Just make that list. Do the brainstorming. Don't try to respond to it. Just try to make a complete list. Here's all the stuff that I'm anxious about, all the stuff that's creating stress for me right now. Then once you got that, number 2 is list your thoughts and attitudes about each one of those. What do I think about that? What am I thinking about that stressor, about that item that's creating anxiety? What is my emotion about it? You know, what do I feel about it? What do I think about it? So that would be one by one. You go down your list and do that for each one of them. Once you've done that, decide if you will keep or displace that thought or feeling. If this is something, yeah, this is good and healthy and I want to keep it, or no, this is really causing me a lot of trouble and it's really ramping up my anxiety, it's really causing me more stress, then I need to get rid of it. I need to decide that I'm going to displace this. I'm going to replace it with something that is healthy, that is completely true, if it's not completely true. As you know, on a true false test, if any small part of a statement is false, the whole statement is false, right? You remember true false tests? Okay, same way with our thinking. It doesn't have to be way off to be false. If it's a little bit off, it's false. It's got to be 100% true to be true. So we can't, give ourselves permission to believe stuff that's not 100% true. That's going to cause us problems. That's going to ramp up the anxiety. That's going to ramp up the stress. So I want to be in touch with, what's really going on in my head, because that's creating my emotion and that's behind my behaviors. Okay. And then, then you accept what you can't change is the other thing that I would say. Once you come to the end of this, there's going to be some stressors that you can't get rid of, like this situation. There's no getting rid of it. It is what it is. There's no way to avoid going through this. We're all going through it. But how you think about it, you do control. How you feel about it, you do control. What you do behaviorally in response to it, you do control. Are you getting a good diet? Are you getting adequate sleep? Are you getting some exercise? Are you getting out in the sun when there is sun? There hasn't been a lot of that. But yeah, are you doing stuff, that you feel good about? So I like to find stuff where I'm accomplishing 2 or 3, maybe even 4 things at a time. So like I went out and cut my hedges. So I saved money because I didn't pay anyone else to do it. I got exercise. I made my yard look good. I got out in the sun and got outdoors in the fresh air. That's 4 things right there, 4 or 5 things that I accomplished just by doing that one thing.
Did you come by my house and do that as well?
No, I was really sore from doing it. I'm still recovering. I got about 100 feet of hedges around my house. Yeah. But the point is, don't sit and mull over stuff. Decide, what does God want me to do? Someone has said, I just decide one thing I want to accomplish each day. That's a good feeling. Then I have a renewed sense that I am in control here. Everything isn't out of control, you know, because I've accomplished something. Doesn't have to be big. I saw vines growing on one of the trees in my backyard. I'd seen it for months, but I hadn't done anything about it. But the other day, I just decided to do something about it. It took about 5 minutes to pull them off, but it felt good to have it done. It looked good too. So yeah, it can be little accomplishments. It doesn't have to be big. You know, if you want to clean, don't make your goal clean the whole house. You know, choose a room, you know, choose one space and accomplish that. That creates more sense of control and accomplishment. So our whole definition of success comes to play here with anxiety. What is your definition of success? When do you know that you're successful? I'm going to let you respond to that before I respond to it. What is success? Anybody? No takers? Can you still hear me? Okay, that's good. So, yeah, I think, you know, whether we can't be kind to ourselves if we're down on ourselves because we're not doing what we did before, we're not, quote, accomplishing as much as before, you know, we have to think about what really is success. You know, what makes me successful? What is success? Nobody has an idea? Surely you do.
I mean, I think for me, I would say that success is accomplishing a goal. I was successful in accomplishing a goal. So setting something that I can do and hitting that mark would be a definition of success.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Anybody else? All right. So in Christian terms, and I think real life terms, success is, I think, simply hearing God and doing what He says. You know, being in touch with God, listening to God. If I'm doing what God says today, then I'm successful today. Success is not something far off in the future, like a lot of the young adults think. You know, I'm never going to be successful because I don't know anything. I don't know how to do anything. I can't get a job because I don't have any skills. You know, and all of this negative talk about self, you know, that young adults tend to have. But the truth is that if I just am in touch with God today and doing what God's telling me to do today, I'm successful. That's already success. I'm just listening to Him and doing whatever He shows me to do. And it's His responsibility. I mean, He created this. If He didn't create it, He at least is the one allowing this situation. So, and I'm His child. It's His job to let me know what He wants me to do, not mine to figure it out on my own. It's for me just to hear from Him. And if I hear from Him and obey Him, then I'm successful. If I'm listening and I'm willing and able to do whatever He says, then that's success in my book. I think that's all He wants. It's just a connection with us, a relationship with us where we're obedient, we're available. So maybe that'll help, you know, as you're having to change everything about how you do ministry. Yeah, maybe that'll help. You know, I'm still successful as long as I'm following the Lord's lead. All right. What else? Here's some common wrong ideas. I should be perfect. I should be the best. I should win. I should succeed. I should always be in control. I should please everyone. That never happened. I should be right. I should make a good impression. People should give me my own way. People should recognize my contributions. Life should be fair. Life should be easy. All these are unhelpful thoughts, you know, that people tend to go down. Yeah. So, yeah, the shoulds are usually guilt-related statements. I should be this or that is usually related to guilt. God doesn't want us living in guilt. That just ramps up the anxiety. Yeah, if you really are guilty of something, then you should be able to name the sin and get forgiveness for it. That's one way to tell the difference between false guilt and real guilt, is if it's really guilt, then you can name the sin and confess it, and should confess it, because you're not supposed to live with that either. If there's sin, just confess it and let him forgive you and move on, get back on the path. That's all God was interested in with the prodigal son, was just him coming back, coming to himself. So yeah, he doesn't beat us up. He doesn't want us to beat ourselves up. That just adds stress. It adds anxiety. Yeah. So what else? Is there something that you're having trouble with that we haven't addressed yet? I'm very interested in hearing that. You've come to this for a reason. Have we addressed what you came to this Zoom meeting for?
I've got a question, Steve.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else is like this, but when I am experiencing a lot of anxiety, sometimes I lash out at other people.
Yes.
And so when I find myself doing that, what is the best way to stop it?
Yeah, well, I think, that's a great question. I think the first one is just recognizing that anxiety is getting the best of me, that I've let it build up, and I haven't dealt with it. Because if I dealt with it, and if I was in that middle place where it's healthy and balanced, then it wouldn't be affecting me that way. So the fact that it's affecting me that way, where I'm more irritable, and all of that, grumpy or whatever, then that's like, okay, that's a clue. That's useful information. That's data I need to think about, because, if I was in the right state of mind, I would be grateful and thankful, giving thanks in all things. I'm obviously not giving thanks in all things at that point. I'm not rejoicing in all things at that point. So like 1 Thessalonians 5 talks about, these are good, it's good information to know, okay, I just caught myself being off the rails. So that means right now I'm not in the right frame of mind. So how do I get back? What am I telling myself that got me there? And how do I get back to the whole truth?
Mm. So I really do love what you're talking about the truth as being the center healthy part, because if you think of it that way, what's the whole truth in the situation, it really does help you, at least for me, it helps you release the overreaction or the lashing out. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and if you read that parable, that passage in Matthew, I think it's Matthew 7. Yeah, Matthew 7, it says, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. Many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. So you're in, great company with the redeemed, with the remnant, if you find the truth, because only few find it, Jesus said. Only few go to the trouble of doing what we're talking about, of trying to stay centered in the truth at all times and not allow ourselves to go one extreme or the other extreme, into one ditch or the other ditch is the way I like to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Satan doesn't care which ditch we're in, as long as he can keep us in a ditch. He doesn't care if we're having a great time or if we're miserable. He doesn't really care about that, just as long as we're not on the road.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So another quote this morning from Practicing His Presence that I liked. It says, I no longer have the sense that life is all before me as I had a few years ago. Some of it is behind, and a miserable poor part that is, so far below what I dreamed that I dare not even think of it, nor dare I think much of the future. This present, if it is full of God, is the only refuge I have from poisonous disappointment and almost rebellion against God. This present. Here I was, engaging in the most glorious action of all human and supernatural life. I was communing with the very God of the universe himself. He was showing me his very heart. Even the angels can do no more than this. I forgot that my being, choked down against the bottom of an ocean like an octopus in disposition too, makes no difference at all. A prison or a dungeon makes no difference if one is with God. We preach and profess that is true, and it is true, but upon my word, I do not see many people who seem to have experienced it. Yeah, this is Frank Laubach's journaling from August of 1930. But yeah, so it's relevant to what we're talking about, staying in the present, staying full of God. He's our only refuge. He's the one that makes the difference. And it doesn't matter what the situation is. Like Paul said, I've learned how to be content. Whatever the situation, doesn't matter the circumstances, I've learned, which he did. We all have to learn this, and no one's perfect at it, but we all have to learn how to be content no matter what comes our way. There's a reason God's letting it happen. And so that's a challenge to find out the reason. It's like, let's do our research. Let's figure this out. What's God up to? Let's get on board. Which, makes it an opportunity instead of a victimization. If I feel the victim of stress and of anxiety, that makes all the difference, I put myself in that victim place. Why is all this happening to me? Why is God letting this happen to me? No. What is his big plan? What's the opportunity here? I'm hoping many people get saved. I'm hoping our country comes to revival, to spiritual awakening. I'm praying for a lot of that. There's opportunity here. This is not all bad. Yeah, so that's just the way that you reframe life, that you think differently about it, makes all the difference. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else we haven't addressed that you wanted to address about anxiety or stress? I did, by the way, record 2 more sessions on stress. I don't know when Pastor Matt's going to release them, but anyway. So we did have 2 more conversations, this time on stress as opposed to anxiety. So yeah, hopefully they'll be up here within a week or 2.
And we'll put links to those videos on our website along with this video, so that anybody can look those up and get to those easily as well. Good.
And there's information. There's a really good information at rapha.info, www.rapha, rapha.info. You can get information there free on anxiety, on stress, and dealing with teenagers' stress and anxiety, how to deal with them is also, there's a document on that there. And then WebMD also had a good, webmd.com also had a good article on how to deal with anxiety. A lot of practical things.
Hey, Steve?
Yes?
I'd like to email you something. Can you give us your email address?
Sure. Send it to me. Send it to stephenarmstrong@att.net. And there's, all small case, Okay. Yeah. Be glad to respond back and forth with any of you. Anything else? I don't know how much time we got, James.
I mean, I'm happy to go as long as we have questions. Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to talk to Steve about or bring up? All right, Steve, thank you so much. I thought this was really helpful. I think that people are going to really appreciate a lot of this. And I think especially with, it looks like we're getting closer to maybe being able to meet back together
Right.
Pastors are going to be making some really hard choices for their congregations on what, how many, and how, and all of those things. And I know that there can be a lot of anxiety that'll come with those questions. So
Yeah.
I believe that this will be really helpful for them.
Yeah. So like you tell people that have panic attacks, that's not a problem you have to worry about. It's going to end, and it's not going to hurt you. You know, so the stress is not going to hurt you. The anxiety is not going to hurt you. You know, it's going to come and it's going to go. Yeah. Even if it's a panic attack, it's not going to hurt you. You're going to live through it. You'll be just fine.
Right. Awesome. Well, Steve, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking some time and speaking to us and sharing a little bit of this information with us. We will post this on our website, on our COVID-19 update button on the DBA.net website. So you guys will be able to access it again or share it with someone if you think that this would be some helpful information for someone that you know. So we will do that. Other than that, I would love to just pray for everyone before we go.
Thank you.
Father, we come before you right now just with grateful hearts, Father, grateful that we are healthy, grateful that we are safe. Father, we also come with some burdens on our hearts, God, as we, as leaders in your church, God, we have a lot on the plate, and everything's new and everything's different. And so, Father, as anxiety comes up, I pray that we remember the truth that you are with us, that you haven't left us, Father, and that you do have a plan. And so, God, I pray that we find comfort in those truths and the things that were shared today. Father, I pray that you put someone in all of these leaders' lives that they can open up with and share these anxieties with, Father. God, I pray that you just give them the outlets they need to get rid of it, because we are going to have it. It's part of just our broken human nature. And so, God, as we deal with it, we pray that you just help us to remember some of the things that Steve shared today that can help us work through that. And God, I just thank you for Steve and his ministry and all the great things that he does. I pray that you keep everyone here healthy and safe, God, as we continue to minister to your people. We love them. We thank you. We pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for coming.